Hey guys, it's your girl Jay, and welcome back to my channel. Today is day 2 in Washington, D.C. I'm going to take you guys inside with me into the National Museum of African American History and Culture. When I tell you, guys, this is like one of my favorite museums now. I haven't been to like museums in such a long time, especially in DC, but this has got to be like one of my favorites. Okay. It took me 2 days to get through this museum, so I'm gonna take you down to the first 3 floors. We're gonna go down. It's 3 floors at the bottom level and 3 floors at the top level. So once you get down the escalator, you're gonna go to this big elevator, and it's going to take you down to the very bottom floor, and you're going to work your way up. That is the suggested plan when you go to this museum, is to start at the bottom and to finish at the top, so you know where we come from and where we have made it to. Also, if you want to pause the video and read the excerpts and like the words that's on the wall or in it or beside the pictures, you can do that as well. I'm not going to make this video any longer than it needs to be. So you can feel free to pause the video, because some of the wording is very, 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 very small. So, I can't just get everything. Okay. So anyways, it's the bottom floor starts out in the beginning of slavery, and how the transatlantic slave trade was one of the largest forced migration in the world. One of the largest forced migrations. Okay. And so yeah, I just love this museum and how they kind of started it out at the bottom. They had a lot of interactive videos as well. So if you're a visual learner, like you don't want to read any of the excerpts on the wall or anything like that, they do have a lot of videos like this, where they just talk to you, through the video, and just talk to you through the history and different things like that. So they have a lot of these all throughout the museum as well. If you're just a person who just want to look at pictures, videos, and just want to hear somebody like talk about it. Okay. So you can do that as well. And one interesting fact is that the shackles here that they show actually started out as jewelry. Like West Africans used to wear the design of the shackles as jewelry. And I guess the colonizers thought, oh, okay, we should make these bigger and put it on their hands. Like, what? Like, what is that? And then over here you'll see each country that colonized the Americas and the Caribbean. It shows what time period that they colonized and how many Africans that they brought over to the Americas and the Caribbean, which it just blew my mind. Okay. And then on the wall here, they have different, I think they have different names and like how, like the date of birth and different things like that, on there. So you can see France was at 1.4 million. And I mean, these things are in millions, oh my God. And then Great Britain was 3.3 million. And then just goes up and up and up and up. I think Denmark, was the one that had the lowest. It was like 500 something thousand. But we all know Portugal had a lot. Yeah. We know the Portuguese had a lot. Okay, Denmark was 85,000. But I just thought that like the detail that they put in this museum was just amazing. It blew my mind, because it was just some stuff in here that I just never knew about at all. It was just some new history facts and artifacts that I learned about, and I'm like, wow, like this is just crazy. It blew my mind, guys. And when I tell you, they put in every detail, and I don't think they left anything out of this museum at all. And so you'll see like it says like the Chesapeake region, and it shows you kind of, and they have like different maps as well, so it shows you how many West Africans they brought to the Americas depending on like the region. So they'll show you like the Chesapeake region, they showed you like the Georgia and Carolinas, it shows you the Gulf region, and how many and like kind of in what countries they come from as well. And it shows you like the Low Country, you'll see yeah, so and like what was the driving force of those regions too. So like, was it rice? Was it sugar? Was it tobacco? Different things like that. So it had, like I said, it had a lot of great artifacts. There were a lot of, I don't think they left anything out. And so, like I said, you know, if you want to pause and read it, you can read it. I'm just gonna move on, so it just won't be like so long. And this picture here is called the Festival of the Yam. Now, this is where the ancestors from the Ashanti tribe used to beat on drums to celebrate the harvest and to celebrate to call on their ancestors and to celebrate them, you know, the ones who died before them. So I thought that was very, very interesting. If you know anything about West African food, you know that kind of replicates a yam. Then they have this timeline talking about the American Revolution and where plantation owners would put their slaves in place of them when it came to serving in the American Revolution. So they would send their slaves off to the American Revolution to fight for them, which is just wrong on so many levels. And then two, but it offered slaves an opportunity for freedom, right? So sometimes some people would escape during the war or whatever and just find, you know, freedom. And so this wall right here talks about how the free communities up in the north. So starting out with Philadelphia, right? We all know Philadelphia was a free state for Black people. And this map to the side of it actually talks about, maps out like the different communities and where free Black people lived. And I thought that was just so unique, and that they actually had like a map. Like when I tell you, this museum is very, very detailed. Okay. And so this right here is Richard Allen. And actually, Richard Allen started the AME Church, because when he converted to being a Methodist, he started to notice that the congregation would discriminate against its Black congregants. So he started the African, you know, version of a Methodist church, basically what today we call it AME Church. So I thought that was very, very interesting as well. So when you walk around, you'll find this little big atrium right here, and it says Founding of America, and it goes into different like time periods and sharing stories of the different leaders who fought for our freedom over time. And so we're going to get into, first they had the Haitian Revolution. It was the first country to rebel against its slave owners, against the French. And Toussaint, they had a statue of Toussaint as well, which is, I really loved that they highlighted the Haitian Revolution. This is Elizabeth Freeman. She was the first person to successfully sue for her freedom in the new nation. They called her Mom Bet. I love that little name. But she successfully sued for her freedom. And actually, she helped Massachusetts to be a free state as well. And here we have Benjamin Banneker. He was actually a free man of Maryland. He had little schooling, but he taught himself math, science, and literature. And he also constructed like wooden clocks, and he did the first land planning of DC, which I thought was very interesting. The museum did show clothing of what our ancestors wore on the plantation. Like they had that shirt and a pair of shoes. This was one of the cotton gins, and it had this big King Cotton like statue, what have you, on there. And then it showed like the bag that they had to like fill the cotton, which I was like, I didn't even recognize that bag was just that big. Like it was big, y'all. And then this map shows you the growth of the cotton plantations. Like it's in 1820, it was just, you know, some here and there. And then by 1860, it grew. And so with the cotton gin, plantation owners recognized that, you know, we can produce way more cotton faster, which in turns didn't help the slaves at all, because the faster you can work, the faster, you know, the more they wanted to produce the cotton and to make the the slaves just work in the fields. Like what? And then this was a whip. I mean, I think that if you're an empath, If you consider yourself an empath, this museum may be a little bit too much for you, especially the first three levels. Mainly the first, maybe like the first level may be a little too much for you because they do show a lot of like things like the whip and the cotton bag and the uniform. They have a cabin. They show a cabin. I'll show you a little later. They show a cabin that the slaves would like live in and stuff. And so I think sometimes, like I said, if you're an empath, it may be a little too much for you. So you may want to start just on the top level or something like that. But yeah. And this too, the auction block, what they call the auction block, they had, that in the casing as well. So I was like, I know some people that just can't take it. But this is just a warning that they do show that. They show the real stuff. Like, this is what happened to our people. So if you can't take it, hey. And I know some, African Black Americans, they just can't take looking at it because they get very, very emotional, which I understand as well. And so on the wall, like on this back wall, they show you like different time periods, like the Constitution of the United States, the Bill of Rights. They have, how America just expanded and how they kind of form each state. So for instance, like the Louisiana Purchase, we know the area of Louisiana was really, really big, before the Louisiana Purchase. And so, and what we know today to be Louisiana is way smaller than what it was back then. So this wall kind of just shows you how they kind of form states after they kept buying up America, how they kept pushing out Native Americans, pushing them out more west. Y'all got to get out or whatever because we didn't brought this land. This land is ours. That's what, was in their heads, so to speak. And so I like how it just, because I'm a visual learner as well. So when I read stuff, I like to picture it as well. So I love how they had the maps and how things just grew at the cost of our ancestors, really. In 1808, the abolition of the international slave trade. So in 1808, they abolished international slave trade, not just slave trade, but international slave trade. So they couldn't get slaves from West Africa and bring them over to the Americas, bring them over to, the Caribbean. They had to stop doing that, or they would be like, I don't think they would be in jail or something. I don't know what was the repercussions of that. I can't remember, but I know the international slave trade got abolished, but that didn't stop a slave trade. They just traded within the states. So you'll get someone from the Carolinas up down from, Mississippi Delta area. They started trading the slaves like that within the states, which was just even worse. Like just stop doing it because it's wrong. But yeah. Then it goes into talking about in 1857, the Dred Scott decision, to where Congress decided the Supreme Court decided that Black people didn't have no rights as a citizen, right? Especially on a federal level, that we couldn't sue the slave owners and plantations. We couldn't sue them on our behalf. Like, we didn't have no rights. Like, it was up to the slave owners or what they wanted to do with their slaves. Like, really? So that's where a lot of abolitionists was like, the math ain't math. And like, y'all say all men are created equal. What men are y'all talking about? And then you have to include enslaved people as well. This wall in the back included the name of a slave, how much they were sold for, and their age. Now they had this one particular slave who was sold for $1. She was 22 years old, and she was actually sold to a medical school. When they were already had passed away, they would sell off their plantation owners would sell off their slaves for $1, very, very cheap, and because that's how they thought of us. So that's how a lot of medical schools did medical research back then, at the expense of our ancestors. Now they had something called the fancy girl trade too, is where the slave owners would sell off the prettiest girl on his plantation, had bright skin, pretty eyes, pretty hair, and would sexually exploit them for a higher price, significantly higher than any other enslaved woman on the plantation. Like they would sell them for like $22,000 that time, which is about, I think, about $400,000 now. Like crazy. And they call that the fancy girl trade. Now we cannot forget about our girl Harriet. Even though I know everybody know what Harriet did and her legacy and everything, I just had to show Harriet Tubman on here. And they had her dress and the gun and the hat and everything. I love Harriet Tubman, so I just had to show that. All right. And so we're going to go upstairs on the second level. Y'all, that was just the first level. It took me 2 hours to get through that. 2 hours to get just the first level, the bottom level on the down. So we're going to go up to the second one where it shows Reconstruction period. But before that, we had to get some lunch because I was hungry. Okay. And now I think it was like 2:00, 2:30. And the cafeteria closed at 3. So we had to stop in there and grab some lunch before it closed. They had so many, different varieties you can choose from. As far as those desserts, you can see it, like it had so much stuff. They had the fruit. They had banana pudding, and then they had some, I think there was a trifle, something like that. But anyways, yeah, they had cookbooks, they had spices, they had cookies you can grab. I think it was like chocolate chip, peanut butter, and a sugar cookie that you can grab. But they were a little hard, so I was like, I don't want to spend, no, I'm not getting that. And they had brownies as well and Rice Krispies. But I had got the collard greens, fried chicken, and macaroni and cheese. And guys, it was actually really good. Like it was good. You can tell like the seasoning was like a universal seasoning. Like it's not what you get at home, but it wasn't bad. And my cousin had got some fish, collard greens, and some carrots. She said the carrots were a little too sweet, but it was actually pretty good, y'all. It wasn't bad at all. I had got me some mumbo sauce. That was my first time trying mumbo sauce, and it was good. It wasn't bad. I added a little hot sauce in it because I like a little spice. But I highly recommend that you guys go to the cafeteria, well, cafe, and try the food. My food came up. I got that meal and a drink, and it came up to like $30. Now the museum is free, but they do get you on their food. So bring at least, I'll say at least $40 for some food if you're gonna, eat in the cafe. If you send your kids on a field trip to this museum, send at least $40 for them to eat, minimum. All right, so now we're headed to the second floor of the bottom levels, where it talks about the era of segregation. Now that slavery has ended, what additional problems did African Americans have to face, right? And so I didn't know this called like the Black Codes. I just knew, I knew of Jim Crow laws and different things like that, but the term Black Codes, restricted our rights to vote. It restricted economic and civic freedom. And over here on this wall, it literally shows in each state what African Americans were restricted on like what you couldn't do, right? So it had even like marriage, it had education, it had housing, it had recreation, even adoption, y'all. Like adoption, like, are you serious? Like, so it, in Indiana, it had, marriage between whites and Negroes were void and different things like that. So it just, each state had their own like separate laws and what they allowed African Americans to do. And so on this wall, of course, the Jim Crow era was blacks and whites couldn't be in the same public space together. They had whites over here, blacks over here. You couldn't use the same like water faucet. You couldn't use the same bathroom. The restaurants had to be different. The schools had to be different. And that went like for a very, very long time. Jim Crow laws went on for a very, very long time. And so here on this wall, it shows just like different prolific abolitionists and people that not even kind of, but people that contributed to the change of America when it came to Black American culture, when it came to establishing historically Black colleges and universities. Here they had like the different bricks from different colleges. Spelman was on there, Florida A&M University, Prairie View, and it just had like, a stone. I mean, not a stone, but an actual brick from those colleges. And then it talks about like in the back of me, it had like how we created our own banks and financial institutions, just to get, try to get ahead, even though we were 400 years behind. Like, just try to get ahead, and we'll create out. You don't want us to have our money in your banks, we'll create our own banks. If you don't want us to go to school and college with with white people, we'll create our own schools and colleges. So this whole little section here just shows even the newspapers, right? Black journalists were so important during those times of segregation because they were the ones that were telling the stories of our people, the stories that may never get across. And they got across like even faster because it was in a newspaper. They were telling stories of race riots. They were telling stories of our people getting killed by police officers or getting hanged and lynched or whatever. They were the ones that were telling those stories and getting those stories out. So, Black journalists were a vital part of history that I think a lot of people don't, actually think about, but they were so vital in history. And so this section here talks about the Great Migration. The Great Migration is where a lot of people from the Deep South, Mississippi, Alabama, even Georgia, they migrated to Illinois. They migrated to Chicago. Everybody know Chicago is our distant cousins from Mississippi, right? If your ancestors were from Mississippi like mine, you probably got some relatives in Chicago, okay? Or, just in the North, in the Midwest. The Great Migration from Mississippi to Chicago, people migrated over to even the Northeast. And so that was really, really big because people saw that it was more opportunity in the North. And so they didn't want to just keep facing, even though it was segregation everywhere, they didn't want to just live in it in the South because it was way, way worse. And so they knew that if they go to the North, they would have even more opportunity when it came to jobs. Now, housing was a big issue when our people moved to the North, because they promised them jobs, but then the housing was really, really bad. But, if you want to look more into it, it's a lot of information about the Great Migration. And then this wall talks about the massacres and the lynching and stuff. You see, they got a news, right? Oh, y'all, I'm telling you, it's some parts of it is really, really, it's really graphic. That's why I say if you're an empath, it may be a little bit too much for you, but it's a lot of parts that you can just skip. You can just, walk through. You don't have to actually look at it, but it is great to know, so that's all I got to say. And also I want to point out that they do have an Emmett Till, memorial, little section, but you cannot record in there. So I couldn't record in there, but I did go in the inside of the Emmett Till memorial, and it was heavy. It was heavy. They had his actual casket that he was buried in, because I think in 2005, they said 2005 or 2012, they actually put him in another casket, and then the old casket, his original casket that he was buried in, they were supposed to put that in a museum in Mississippi, but they didn't. And so his mom actually gave the casket to the museum here, the African American History Museum and Culture. And so his original casket was, refurbished or whatever, and is sitting in the museum. So it is, I guess that's why they don't let you record. But it's really heavy. And I do encourage people to go in there if you can take it. But yeah. So in this section here, it has a lot of just visuals, and it has a lot of, the recordings or whatever from back then during segregation, during the civil rights movement, and when we was walking for freedom. Basically, that's what we were doing, peacefully walking for freedom. And so I did like this section a lot. And this little bar here is where you can, it's like an interactive, not a game, but like an interactive little thing you can do. And so these interactive scenarios is basically just asking you, if this happened to you, if you were living during these times of segregation, what would you do? Would you do this or would you do that? Right. And so I think I had did a sit-in. Yeah, I think I had did that one. Or no, I did the freedom rides. Yeah, I did the freedom rides. And so that's when African Americans went to different cities to march, right? And then they did those freedom rides. They call them freedom rides. So it's basically like, if you would go to one city, you may not come back because you may get killed or you may be jailed, different things like that. So they just, it just asks you different questions and have your mind thinking. And the museum did highlight, segregation when it came to transportation, because we all know that blacks and whites couldn't sit in the same area when it came to sitting on the bus or in the car or whatever. And they actually had this train in here. I didn't even know they had this in here until like when I first walked in the museum. I was like, oh my gosh, like they literally have everything. Okay. And so they let you actually go inside the train and kind of see what it feels like. They don't let you sit down in the seats. They have it roped off, but they do actually, like, it felt like a real train, like back in the day. So the front part is the whites only. As you can see, they had big bathrooms they even had a seat inside the bathroom. Like, so that bathroom was big, right? And so they had a water fountain in it, and they had places where they can put their luggage. Now we're gonna go to the part, and they had another bathroom. So they had two bathrooms with two seats in it, two sinks, all that. And so now we're gonna go back to where black people had to sit in the back of the bus. As you can see, it wasn't as many seats in the back. And you can see, look how small the bathroom is. There's no seats in there. It's just a sink and a toilet behind that little door, and that was it. But yeah. And so when you walk up to the third level, it shows you like how Black Americans kind of created our own culture, how we had to start creating our own thing. So it gave, it shows like different important people when it came to film, music, when it came to theater, when it came to, the Black Panther movement, when it came to medicine, when it came to journalism. And I just love how the museum highlights literally everything, right? So that's why I say that it's recommended that you start at the bottom and then work your way up. So they want to show you like where we started and how far we have come as a culture, as a people, as a race. Like it didn't happen overnight. It took some strong people, men and women. It took strong people to bring us to where we are today, to fight for our rights and different things like that. Like, and it shows you too that a lot of other people also benefited from the civil rights movement, also benefited from, how we fought for our freedom. Right. So, I just love this little area right here. And you can see, because these things are like really, really small, like the writing. So if you visit the museum, you can just kind of read it yourself. But I just love this little area because it really kind of, like, when I went on this floor, it really kind of lifted my spirits and made me proud. Like, dang, like we, our people came over here unwillingly, involuntarily, right? And we made something out of nothing. Like, we had to literally build ourselves up and, build our culture up and our foundation up from the bottom, we had to start all over, right? And we can do it again and again and again and again. And that's what I just love about Black people, and this museum just shows a lot about Black pride, Black culture, and you can do anything. So it literally and it encourages you as well, like you can do anything in this world. Anything is possible. Like, we've been through the rough of the rough. Our ancestors has, went through that. And so they went through that. There's nothing that you can't do. Literally, there's nothing that you can't do in this country, basically. Right. So that's my little spiel. But this wall here shows you just kind of what happened during each decade. We started in the 70s, as far as culture, as far as politics and different things like that, and just how Black culture shaped America. Because it did, even though some people may not, recognize it or say, no, it didn't, we don't have no culture and all of that. No, baby, this museum show you we have culture. We have culture, and it's still influencing other cultures as well. Whether people want to accept that or not, it is. Okay. And this floor actually ends with Obama becoming president. And that's how this level ends. And then you walk out, and then you go to the other 3 floors at the top. So I just love how it ended. Like, we have a Black president at the end. I love that. And so I'm going to do part 2 of this video. And I'm going to show you the other top 3 floors. So if you like this video, please like, comment, share, subscribe, share your experience, that what you had in the museum, how it meant to you. And then we're going to go over to the next part of the museum. See you in the next video.